I used to suck at lighting. Every drawing I did was flat and lighting was more of a guessing game. Sometimes I get it and a lot of times I don't. Like, is there a difference if I put the light here versus here? Anyways, it just seems like a whole nother can of worms when it comes to lighting. That's why I went to an ultra secret painstaking training regimen to learn how to paint light properly.
And a 10-kilometer run!
And in this video, I'll share those secrets with y'all using Mappa Studios' hit title Chainsaw Man. Here's Pochita. Aside from being adorable as fuck, Pochita is also being lit under 3 light sources. The first one is called the key light. This is the main light source in the scene and is usually the strongest. The most common key light source, you guessed it. The second light here is called the rim light, the one that's in every Marvel poster. It's a strong light placed to the side or behind the character to accentuate their silhouette, giving them a border of light around their figure. And then finally we have the fill light, which is used to fill in the shadows. The reason why characters aren't just pitch black on the other side of the key light is because of this. So those are the basic functions or roles a light source can play in the scene. Thank you, Pochita. Now, to each of those light sources, we have 4 parameters that we need to consider. How big is the light source? How strong is the light? What's the color? And finally, the shape, which we can affect using something called barn doors in films or filters for that dappled effect. By tweaking each of these things and the position of the light, we can achieve drastically different looks. Now that we know the basics, let's get into the juicy part to see how the pros actually light their scenes and how they use light to enhance the story and composition. Spoiler warning, this part of the video will have some minor spoilers going forward as I will be using scenes from the anime to explain my talking points. So if you haven't watched the anime, go watch it now and come back to this video. Alright, let's look at this first scene at the hospital after Denji defeated the bad demon. In this case, the only light source here is the sunset light coming from the big window here. Since it's sunset, the warm orange tones all over the room and we have this mystery fill light lighting up the shadows of the room. Except this is called ambient light. Basically, this happens because of the bouncing nature of light. Light enters the room through the window here and it bounces off the floor and the walls, lighting up the entire room. Okay, whoa, now hold on a second. RossDraws, you just used 2 different terms for the same thing. What's the difference between the ambient light and fill light then? Good question. It's direction. Ambient light generally has no direction and is just the result of bouncing light rays, whereas fill light is often intentional and is pointed towards something for the purpose of lifting the shadows. The placement of the characters are also worth noting here, as this sets up an excuse for Mappa to do this next. Throughout the scene, Denji stays fully in the light and Aki in the shadows, with only some faint bounce light acting as rim light for highlighting Aki's face. There's also this under lighting going on that makes him look like he might be hiding something. Aki goes on and sort of interrogates Denji about Power's betrayal and warns him about how untrustworthy demons can be. So Mappa exaggerated under lighting here on Aki's face, which is often used for supernatural and horror settings to make him look more menacing as he gives Denji the warning. Here we really see the contrast between the 2 characters and the intentions during the conversation. Mappa was able to bring out those personality differences smoothly using lighting as a support. Now, let's look at another scene with a similar setup, but this time the roles are reversed. The gang is celebrating with a drinking party after yet another tough battle. There are warm lights everywhere in the izakaya to make the scene feel friendly and safe. Pretty similar setup as the previous scene, except this time it's using artificial light, so the room is much more well lit and also less moody compared to the single light source setup as the last scene. Then all of a sudden, Denji finds out that he might have a chance for a kiss with Himeno, which apparently turns into a sloppy kisser when she gets drunk. And immediately into the next scene, Denji's face is casted into the shadows, showing his not so pure intentions after learning that information. Yeah, drink more, Makima, drink more. Now, this is slightly exaggerated again for a comical effect. In a more realistic setting, it wouldn't be this dark all of a sudden. This is obviously Mappa using their artistic license to emphasize the story moment. Next, here's a small example of how tweaking the parameters of a light source can give very cool effects to a scene. During the scene where they encountered the Sword Devil, Aki summoned Kon, and the Fox Devil's eye basically acted as a large key light, being very close to Aki. This creates this very soft lighting on top of Aki, which I thought was pretty cool. If the video is being helpful to you so far, please do leave a like and subscribe. These videos take a long time for me to make, so I would appreciate any support. Now that we know what are the basics to lighting and how we can use them in stories for mood and atmosphere, let's explore some common lighting scenarios that we can use in our own work. Lighting scenarios can be divided roughly into two types: indoors and outdoors. Indoor lighting mostly involve artificial lights like light bulbs, candles, and LEDs. I would even count sunlight coming from windows or doors as indoor lighting. With artificial lights, the setup is usually a little more complicated because they can be placed anywhere and they have more variety in terms of color temperature and hue. For example, in this scene, Denji and Power are chilling around some vending machines, and these lights around them gives off that bluish tint. Compared to this scene when a gang came out of the izakaya and they have that warm reddish lantern lights behind them. These differences in color is called color temperature and can be measured using something called the Kelvin scale. And then we have light coming in from the windows. This usually means the light source is either going to be the sun, moonlight, or a street light. This is a very common lighting scenario for creating moody atmospheres. Just like this scene when Denji was being brought to Himeno's place for some sexy time, with the enchanting moonlight shining through the massive window in Himeno's room. The choice of lighting here really sets up the atmosphere for what's about to happen. Aww.
What the heck?
Or this scene with Makima, that beautiful sunset and some intense finger biting. Sorry, I choked on my water. Then we have outdoor lighting, which is much more straightforward. The primary light source being the sun, or again the moon, or street lights if it's a night scene. The main concern here is the time of day, which determines the direction of the light and color temperature. Another thing we need to pay attention to when painting outdoor scenes is skylight, aka scattered blue ambient light coming from the sky. I won't go too much into details about the science behind this since it's already covered by a lot of other tutorials, but just know that adding this can make your paintings more convincing if it's an outdoor setting. I know I'm skipping past a lot of things here, but lighting is such a huge topic and I don't want this video to be super long. So if you want me to dive deeper into each of these topics, let me know in the comments. Another main purpose of lighting is for setting up compositions and bringing attention to things in the scene. The goal to all this is to create interesting shadows that can lead the eye around the frame. A neat little trick Mappa used here is selective vision. Using lighting, they bring the relevant characters into the light while darkening the supporting characters. Like this scene when the focus is on Kobeni and Aki when they were conversing, but as soon as Denji comes in and rudely interrupted them, those two are darkened and the light shines on Denji to bring the focus onto him. Same trick they use here when Himeno is being slapped by her ex-colleague's girlfriend and Aki saw that happening. Another cool thing Mappa did was at episode 8 during the battle between the Katana Devil and Aki and friends. They used the movement of light to bring attention to the subjects in the scene, like Ghost's hands stepping into the light, Himeno when she's standing up with conviction, the light here moving to reveal Aki's expressions, and the same light here moving to bring Himeno's clothes and eye patch into the light. Also here in the opening where Aki steps into the shadows to throw the bowling ball with a little rim light here, that creates a nice contrast between him and the really lit up background. And then there are also some basic framing techniques to using light, like Denji and Makima under the window light here, and the spotlight effect here framing Makima's face in an interesting way, or using backlight where they introduces the Katana Devil. Alright, let's move on to another concept here, light fall off. Denji and Aki investigates a devil infested house, only to find this well-educated gentleman snacking on his pet bird. The dude was swiftly eliminated and the duo carried on their conversation. We can see it's a window lighting setup here, the main key light being the sunlight coming from the window and the rest is just ambient light in the room doing its job. The perspective might make it look like the light is coming straight on, but if you look closely, the light exposure is actually stronger on one side and weaker on the other. This gradient here is called the light fall off, or inverse square law.
What the fuck?
Okay, so I want you guys to pay attention to this equation here. As you can see, intensity is inversely proportional. Yeah, so to put it simply, light becomes weaker exponentially as it travels further from the light source. This effect can be very strong even within a relatively short distance. This is Mappa's play on light fall off because they wanted to clearly show the red of the bloodstains on the floor. Post-edit rice brush hair, the reason why there's a gradient there is because those are two different materials, one being the white sheets and the other the floor. So I was being an idiot here, but the principle of light fall off still holds. Alright, back to the video. Another interesting thing to note is at the next cut. The devil is placed out of the light. Davinci, who is talking in the scene, is being placed under the light instead. This sets up the hierarchy of the character's importance in the scene and tells the viewer which one we should be focusing on. The same fall off can be seen here in the opening scene. I happen to really like this frame, so let's paint something using this as inspiration. So there are probably two light sources here, one being the really bright and close shining this way, slightly up on Davinci's face, the other being the greenish ambient light from the top. Now, there are a lot of ways you can add light with digital painting. The most standard way would be getting the base colors filled up first, then use blending modes for the lighting. I make a mask of the whole character and throw a multiply layer on the whole thing with maybe this color. After that, I just simply erase away the parts I want the light to hit. This way I add them back with the mask and sculpt the light shape as I go. Now to simulate the juicy subsurface scattering effect, I'll be using a color dodge layer with a low opacity brush and a midtone color. Then I just airbrush the edges around the boundary of light and shadow here. You can also just draw lines using a saturated color. Honestly, it's your call. At this point, it's more of a stylistic choice. I happen to have a video on how the color dodge king himself uses color dodge in his paintings, so definitely check it out. Anyways, now we just have to do the ambient light and add some light fall off effect. With ambient light, we just have to keep it relatively subtle and not too overpowering. So let's use lighten mode again with a relatively darker value. Then we'll do a fill light on the shadows to light things up a little more. I'll just lock the transparency of the shadow layer here and use an airbrush, very lightly tap that. I'll also do a gradient with multiply to darken the lower part here so that the focus goes up to the face. And this is our light fall off. Yeah, this turned out alright. If you like this video, then I'm sure this one will also be interesting to you, so go watch it next. Bye!